So this podcast is the first installment in my Brain Builder podcast series. So yesterday, I came up with the idea of doing a daily podcast in which I state one simple idea and then pose a kind of test question, which I will answer in the subsequent podcast. And when I stated this idea to my colleague Norma Jean Gradsky, she suggested that I use the term build a brain, and I modified that to brain builder, so I thought I should give her credit for that. In any case, today's idea is the idea of a Phillips curve. I myself did not know what a Phillips curve was until around 15 minutes ago. So I looked it up, and at first I thought I was misreading what I was reading, but then it turned out I was reading it correctly. Here's the idea. It turns out that when inflation is high, unemployment is low. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. When inflation is high, in other words, when money is overvalued, when there is a superabundance of money, when money is cheap, when money is being printed in excessive amounts, in consequence of which any given unit of money is worth less than it should be. When inflation is high, unemployment is low. So the more inflation, the more employment. And the Phillips curve is simply the curve that results when you plot this dependence on a graph. Now here's the question, and it's not really a question to which there is a simple answer, and it's not a question to which I can give you the answer, although I'll outline one. Why does this hold? What is the explanation? Here is what immediately came to my mind, which is that when inflation is extremely high, people are not really, in contexts in which there is hyperinflation, people are not really in a position to not work. So where is it that people are in a position to not work? They're in a position to not work, to be unemployed, in places like the United States or in places like Britain, where there is a lot of affluence. Okay, so in the United States, let's say you're unemployed. Well, one possibility is that you'll be evicted the next day, you have absolutely no credit, and you'll starve to death. That's a possibility, but it's not the most likely scenario. A more realistic scenario is that you have $50,000 in untapped credit. You can go to the welfare office. I don't know how welfare works exactly, but obviously certain kinds of welfare are available. You have relatives who have credit if you don't have credit. You can loaf around. You may have some reserves. You probably have, a car that you can sell that you don't really use. So in a place like that, you can be unemployed, and in a place like that, there is no hyperinflation. I mean, the inflation rate in the United States is steady and slow, very slow actually. And but in a place like Zimbabwe, okay, where there was, or in the Weimar Republic, there was so much inflation that money essentially became worthless. So people would instead of using the actual currency, they might use cigarettes, or they might exchange goods. They might use currency, but it would obviously be of vanishingly little significance. So, but in a condition like that, there cannot possibly be unemployment, or there cannot really be total unemployment, because people need to scrounge around just to get food, and if they're doing that, they have to be engaged in some kind of gainful pursuit just to eat, because there are no social structures, no social safety net of any kind. So that is my explanation, and is it correct? It may be here's what I suspect very weakly. I suspect that it's correct of some cases, but I highly doubt that it's a comprehensive explanation. So that's a thought for you, and I invite you to think about why it is that high inflation correlates with high employment. Okay, there you go. So that's the concept of the Phillips curve, and this was the first of a very long series of Brain Builder audios.